suggest that I want to be associated with that.
They have really good reviews.
All right. Looks like we're right on time. I will avoid doing the roll until after, well, actually, your quiz will tell me whether you're here or not, so we need to do that. All right. So, open up your computers to Excel. And basically, pull up the little spreadsheet I sent you yesterday. And you should have a couple handouts in front of you that I passed out during our break. You should have a copy of the syllabus. Everybody got a copy of that? Yes? Okay, and then the other one should have a one-pager that is a double-sided sort of time value of money sort of spreadsheet thing.
Yeah, actually, seriously, it doesn't fall.
Yeah?
We don't have that.
Okay, everybody got everything? You ready? All right. Everybody got Excel open?
No.
Okay, get it open. We got stuff to do. Time's a waster. Okay, once you've got Excel open, once again, pull up the spreadsheet that I sent to you via email. Should look like this, which also should look like the handout that I just gave you. Okay. A couple more minutes. Go easy on you the first day.
So we should just open it from your email? Anybody else thinking they should get a Wi-Fi?
You can use, obviously, the guest network limitedly, but then the one NSU network is the other one that you have to type in all your credentials on, but that one's usually a little bit more reliable.
Thank you.
So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to kind of walk you through a lot of the basic Excel functions and financial functions specifically to pretty much be able to show you how to do everything in Excel that you can do on the financial calculator, okay? And you'll find that obviously it's probably a little bit quicker, a little bit cleaner on Excel than it is on the calculator. Plus you can see precisely everything that's going on in Excel that you can't always see with the calculator. But there's a little bit of a, there's some little nuances that we'll kind of walk ourselves through and try to help to sort of explain those. And just out of curiosity, and I want you to be honest, I don't want anybody, over-exaggerating or under-exaggerating, but on a scale from 1 to 10, in terms of how you perceive your Excel skills, okay? Not anybody else, just how you perceive it. Be honest, okay? How many of you would say you're probably 7 and above? Okay, so 3 or 4 or 5.
That is the most ambitious thing.
Okay.
Is that in a scale from
No, it's so
1 to 10?
I'm saying from 1 to 10.
Oh, okay.
But you consider yourself 7 or above.
No idea.
Okay, so about 4 or 5 people. Okay, how many of you would sort of consider yourself in like the 4, 5, 6 sort of
I'm
range?
6.5, so I think I fall.
Okay. And then how many of you are down at 1, 2, and 3? Okay. And how many of you are at 0? Okay. All right. Good to know. All right. Just so that we know we've got a diverse group in that respect. Okay. All right. Has everybody got the spreadsheet pulled up? Okay. Does everybody not have the spreadsheet pulled up? Let me ask that question. Okay. Still waiting on a couple people because it doesn't make sense for you to kind of jump into this until you've got it pulled up.
Let me see if I got it.
what we're going to do is we're going to take this little spreadsheet. This is where we're going to start. Okay, and we're going to gravitate around, do different things, and kind of explain it kind of as we go along. But the way I set this little thing up was to try to make it as user-friendly as possible and relatively self-explanatory. So this little spreadsheet that we've got pulled up, and let me kind of zoom out a little bit so that we can kind of, let's see where you see a bunch of yellow boxes all throughout this spreadsheet. The yellow boxes, as I have set this spreadsheet up, are going to be, in this particular case, our formula cells, okay? In other words, where we're going to be putting in some sort of a financial formula to be able to calculate what it is we want to calculate. All of the other ones, all of the cells that are just simply black and white with the numbers already filled in, those are going to be kind of your input cells, okay? But the yellow ones are going to be kind of where we have to do the work, where we actually have to put in an Excel formula in order for it to do what we want it to do. Does that make sense? Okay? And I kind of did that on purpose so that, you know, and whenever I set this first one up, the idea, you know, it keeps everybody in the same cells, it keeps everybody, you know, from, you know, we're going to create some stuff from scratch, trust me. But this one just sort of helps us to get some of the fundamental skills down so that we don't get too far off track. All right? So having this pulled up, what you should see, this top one, the time value of money calculator, what it's set up to do are the very basic time value of money functions. And in each case, what you're really going to be solving for, you're going to be solving for, in this case, the number of periods. In the second one, you're going to be solving for the interest rate. In the third one, for the present value. For the next one, the payment. And for the last one, the future value. And you see, the line is, so in other words, the way to look at this, okay, so that you don't get confused, is that each column represents a different problem, okay? I'm using pretty much the same numbers just to sort of show, we can kind of check ourselves, if you will, all right? So that we know that we're, you know, when we initially get this thing set up, that everybody's on the same page, we're getting the same answers, all is good. So this is a simple little mortgage problem. It's a $100,000 loan at a 10% interest rate, and I just happen to know, obviously it's 30 years, and then the monthly payment's going to be $877.57, and there's not going to be any future value, okay? That we already sort of know by virtue of just me having set this thing up this way. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the one that's probably the easiest, okay? And that is to do the payment calculation. All right? So we're going to blow this up a little bit, because I'm sure that some of you are much like me, that you potentially, your eyesight's not what maybe it used to be. So, all right.
Squeeze into here.
So let's go over here to the column that has payment in it, and go down specifically to cell E11. All right? Now the first thing, actually before we do that, we're going to go up here to E6. Now if you remember from using the financial calculator, one of the things that you have to do in the financial calculator up front is what? Set the number of compounding periods per year, whether it's monthly, whether it's annual, whatever. You basically have to do the same thing with Excel, okay? And so in this case, what we're going to do is, we were telling it up here, there's 12 payments per year, so we're telling it it's monthly. But in this cell, cell E6, what we want to put in there, specifically what we want to put in there, is the total number of periods for the loan. So in this case, what would that be?
12 times 30.
12 payments per year times 30 years, or, oh, no, I didn't start that, okay. Or 360 months, okay? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
All right, so all we're going to do, and everybody has, you know, their own way of doing this. I'm just going to do equal, oh, hello, why is it not showing up?
You're on read only.
Oh, how did that happen?
He might be an 8.
That's weird.
Just hit save.
Yes.
Because it's read only.
Yeah.
He's a 9. I don't know if you can change that.
Just go to the top and open it up and reset.
I like that.
All right, let's see. Allowing me to do anything. There we go. All right, so once again, equal, we're gonna go down, get cell E8, multiply by cell E5, all right? And we should get 360, okay, once again. So that's the first step. Is everybody able to see that in the back? Okay. All right, so that was easy. Okay, now then, for the payment, one of the things that Excel does is it helps walk you through the key components that you need to actually solve for whatever it is that we're trying to solve for. So in this case, for the payment function, the way we access it is once again hit equal, and hit PMT, or type in PMT, and then open up the parentheses. And whenever you do that, right below, you will see payment, and then it'll be open parentheses, and it'll say rate, comma, number of periods, comma, present value, comma, future value, in parentheses, comma, and type. Okay, does everybody see that? All right. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to basically just be populating each of those respective variables, and then it should then pop in the actual payment amount for this loan of the $877.57. So the way I'm going to do it is we're going to go up in the rate. We're going to click on that, okay? But there's a caveat here, and that is unless you tell Excel differently, it automatically assumes everything is annual, okay? So you've got to, if you've got something that's monthly, you've got to do the conversions to make it monthly or make it whatever compounding periods that you want it to be, okay? So the way that I would suggest you do it is once you've captured that particular cell, cell E9, then I would take this, I would do divided by, and then I would go up and capture cell E5. So what we're doing is we're basically saying take that particular interest rate and divide it by the number of compounding periods per year to make it monthly. Does that make sense? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. After you've done that, then you're just going to hit comma. Now you're moving on to the number of periods, okay, for this particular calculation. All right, well, this one is relatively simple because we've already done the calculation up here to get the 360, so we can just simply click on cell E6, okay, for the 360 as the number of periods. All right, comma again. And then we're going to do present value, which is cell E10. Now we may have to come back and do some adjusting on the sign, but we'll deal with that here in a minute, okay? All right, and then comma. Now then the future value is 0, but we're going to go ahead and include that particular cell reference, which is cell E12. Okay. And then comma again. And then we're going to, for the type, we're going to select cell E14. Now I'm going to explain that here in a second, but before I do, let's just go ahead and make sure, let's see if you match everything that I put in so far. So it should be equal payment E9 divided by E5, comma, E6, comma, E10, comma, E12, comma, E14. Okay, everybody good with that? All right, let's see what we get. Boom, got what we were looking for, 877.57. So now what we should be able to, yes?
Sorry, did you plug in the 360?
We did a calculation to compute that. What we did was to take E5 times E8. Okay? Now, what we should be able to do, after we've done that and we match up with the 877.57, so we know we got the right answer, if you got that. Okay, everybody get that? Okay? If you didn't, you need to find out quickly. All right. So, now what we should be able to do is go in for any of the other variables. Let's just change them real quick. So we go from a 30-year loan to a 15-year loan. We go from a 10% interest rate to a 5% interest rate. We go from a $100,000 loan to a $150,000 loan. And we also have a remaining balance on the loan of, let's say, $5,000. We'll make that actually a negative. All right. So this is just a check to see if the formula we put in there works. Okay. So once again, just make sure, see if yours matches up. So all we changed, we went to a 15-year loan, 5% interest rate, $150,000 loan, and then changed the future value to a negative $5,000. Okay.
Why negative?
No reason other than just to test and see if it's working.
Okay.
All right. And then also, excuse me, if you want to, we can change now and say, okay, instead of this being on monthly payments, we want it on annual payments. There we go. Done. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Yes? All right. So that's just making sure that everything is set up correctly if you're still getting the same number. And then when we go down here, now the one piece I need to explain is this whole begin versus end. Okay, so I'm going to change that to a 1. The number goes down a little bit. Okay? Now, we have two ways of, what?
Did you manually input the 5,000 or did I highlight it basically?
Manually input the 5,000. This is the part that is the formula. This is hard-coded negative 5,000.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then down here, once again, we change the beginning end from 0 to 1. Let me talk about that. Okay, you have two ways of recognizing income as far as the calculator or Excel is concerned. We didn't talk about this morning with the calculator. We will, but we're going to talk about it now actually with Excel. It's the same thing. It's a question of when you choose to recognize income or expenditures. And what we mean by that is, do you recognize the income at the beginning of the period or at the end of the period? Now, what we mean by that is, think of it like this. I own, let's say, an office building. Over the course of the year, I have people paying me rent. I have expenses I have to obviously write checks for. And at the end of the year, after everything is said and done, I've gotten all my income, I've had all my expenses, and then I've got a net number at the end of the year that I can use and say, this was my income from the property over the course of the year. Yes? Okay? That is normally how we recognize income from real estate. We recognize it after we have received it and after the expenses have been paid. Does that make sense? So as a general rule, all income from real estate typically gets recognized at the end of the period. Now, that is not necessarily the same as when it is paid. And what I mean by that is rents are typically paid when? Beginning of the month. But we don't recognize the income really until the end of the month, because we have bills to pay and we have other things to sort of concern ourselves with. So whenever we are doing investment analysis for a piece of real estate, to be conservative, we pretty much push all of the income, all of the expenses to the end of the period, whether it's the end of the month or end of the year. Okay. And you're saying, okay, who cares? Why does that matter? Well, it matters because from a time value of money perspective, you're either losing out on a month's worth of interest or you're potentially gaining a month's worth of interest if it gets pushed one direction or the other. Does that make sense? Let me draw you kind of a little diagram, all right?
Sorry, did I talk before?
Yep.
I'm not getting the same calculation as you're paying me.
Okay, well, hold on a second.
You gotta put 1 year,
Ah,
because it's ending, I did the same.
Okay.
okay, I got it. Got it.
So think of it like this. We've got sort of like a timeline. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right? Now, in this particular case, let's say that we've got a property. We spent $100,000 on it. Okay, so here at time period 0, we have spent $100,000. Okay, now what we have said in our previous class and what we've sort of focused on is we said, okay, well maybe we've got $25,000 of income, so that occurs here. We've got another, let's say $30,000 of income occurs here. $45,000 of income maybe occurring here. Maybe $35,000. And $40,000 here, and then a sale occurring here at the end of year 5, maybe of $150,000. Okay, so timing-wise, the assumption that we're making with this is that all of the income that's being generated from this property, even though rents may be paid up here, we've also got expenses that we've got to take into account over the course of that year, so we don't really realize the income until the end of the year. Does that make sense? Okay, now, in some investments, you may say, well, okay, everything is paid at the very beginning of the month, and all expenses maybe are immediately subtracted at the beginning of the month, so you technically could recognize the income a full month sooner if you were super efficient in getting all of that income sort of collected and deposited and ultimately, you know, set aside in your bank account. But as a matter of practice, it doesn't usually happen that way, okay? Usually everything is pushed back. Now, you're saying, well, what does this have to do with this whole begin-end thing? Okay. So the way that the Excel and the way that your calculator look at this is you've got a choice to make. You can either choose to accept everything like is written here, and everything is happening at the end of the period, or you can make the choice to move everything forward a full period. Does that make sense? And if you do that, the function that allows you to do that is kind of this begin-end function. Okay? And another word for it, if those of you kind of with finance backgrounds, is called an annuity due. Okay? And it just simply means that you're being paid right now, right this minute, and realizing the income right here, right now. Now, the only reason I'm going into explanation on this is because I pretty much anticipate you would ask me the question, well, what is this whole begin-end thing, and what does it do, and what's the purpose of it, and that sort of thing. And so that's the explanation. Now, what this does, if you think about it from an investment perspective, if you were able to realize all of that income a full, in one sense, year in advance, then that means you're getting your money quicker as the owner of the property. Therefore, what? Your rate of return is going to be a little bit higher as a result. Okay? Does that make sense? Yes, no, possibly could be.
Is that a 1 or a 0?
Where?
For that, if you move it forward?
Which one, I'm sorry?
Under the type.
Under which type?
Like whenever you're doing it in Excel, like your example there, because you got to choose, 1 or 0.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that at time period 0 is the soonest that you could collect anything. But normally, you don't realize any income until the end of the period or end of the year. So in this case, that $25,000, while you have been collecting revenues over the course, because chances are, you didn't get a single lump sum payment of $25,000.
Right.
You probably got 12 monthly payments of income minus 12 monthly expenses for that each individual month, and at the end of the year, that netted you $25,000, which would be virtually impossible for you to be able to predict or to realize at the beginning of the year. So what I'm trying to tell you, very simply, and I'm going into a little bit too much detail, is as a general rule, you almost never, ever are going to use the begin function for real estate transactions. Okay?
Is that something you should be looking out for when you're looking over documents, analyzing a business?
I wouldn't think so, other than, sometimes you do have folks with sketchy accounting practices that want to try to realize income before they actually get paid. And, and that can be, real problematic. And they sort of say, yeah, they are, are going to pay us 6 months in advance, or they're going to do this or that or the other thing, but you need to be...
The funny thing about a forecast is we always forecast to make more money than we actually do, right?
Right.
So that's where it comes into play.
Yeah. Okay, moving back. Okay. So, just to make sure, is everybody matching up with my number here? Yes? For that particular line item. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Once again, I'm not going to walk you through it. I am going to walk you through most of them, but I'm going to try to make sure that you understand what it is you're doing. So let's just do this. All right? I want you to try to do the one for the present value column on your own. Okay? All you're going to do, once again, the function is simply going to be equal present value, and then open the parentheses and basically mimic what we did on the other ones. But you're going to obviously change a couple of little things. Getting it?
18 cents off.
Yeah, that may be rounding.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of work through this. Before we do that, let's go up here and go ahead and make the adjustment for this. So we need to do equal, and then D5 times, in this case, D8. So give us, in essence, our 360 up there. Okay, then we come down here. Equal present value, okay? Now, so our rate is going to be the 10%, but what do we have to do? Divide it by, right, D5, okay, comma, And the number of periods is going to be D6, comma, and then D11, comma, D12, comma, and then D14, close parentheses, see if we did it right, and you're off by 8 cents, but once again, totally due to rounding. And the reason why it would be off, and think about it like this, because the actual answer, if you were to put it in as a $100,000 loan, 10% for 360 months, your answer is not 877.57. It's actually 877.57 and a bunch of, extra half a pennies and whatever else. Well, that's what throws it off. Okay. Everybody good?
Can you double click on your answer? I just want to see if my numbers are matching up. Get down your diagram. Yeah, I got it now.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So let's move over and do the same thing for the interest rate calculation. So in this case, once again, we're going to do kind of the same thing. We're going to take C5 times C8. All right. Now then, for the interest rate, it's going to be equal rate, open parentheses. And see if you can do that one on your own. Equal rate, open parentheses. Okay, good question. The guess is one of the things that Excel does in order to solve for this is it basically goes through an iterative process, okay, in terms of how it goes about actually coming up with a solution. And the only way for it to be able to come up with a solution is it plays kind of internally a high-low game. And whenever it processes the information, it will start with a guess number, and then it will solve the answer, and it will see, yeah, it needs to be raised, or it needs to be lowered, it needs to be raised, it needs to be lowered, to eventually come into convergence on what the actual rate will be. And so you can put a seed value, it's pretty much meaningless, but it's just something that it requires. And so what I typically do, put in like 0.10 or something like that as a guess, and that should be sufficient. Okay, so let's just sort of walk our way through this. So the number of periods, C6, comma, the payment, C11, comma, present value, C10, comma, future value, C12, comma, type, C14, comma, and then for the guess, I'm just going to put in a hard-coded 0.1, see if that works. Now, we're not going to get the answer we're seeking. Why do you think we're not going to get the answer we're seeking? Not because of the guess.
Periods.
Well, I'm sorry?
It's the periods.
That's
No, not the periods.
That's a periodic rate for each.
It's a periodic rate of, in the sense it is a monthly rate. Okay, so what we have to do is to take that rate and multiply it by 12. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. You're basically going to tail into this. You're going to put times. Well, actually, you're not going to put times 12. You're going to put times, and then we're going to cell reference cell C5. Okay, and then now hit enter. Boom. Okay. Okay, so once again, we pop that up.
You just have to remember that.
Well, anytime, once again, what did I say Excel automatically assumes everything is annual. Okay, whenever it's not, you've got to adjust it somehow. And so that's the adjustment that you have to do in the event that this, in this case, it's monthly.
Would you have to do that for anything else besides the rate?
Not like that, no. Okay? Okay, everybody matching? All good?
Is there any,
Sorry,
if
what?
we put in commas between all those, does it matter the order that
Okay,
they're in?
one more time?
When you put in commas between each one of those, things in there, does it matter which order they're in? Or it doesn't matter the order?
Well, all that matters is, are we saying column, are we talking about this one versus this one versus this one?
Where you're entering, which is rate, equal rate, comma,
Yeah, well, it does, because it's telling you specifically what you need to order
oh, I
first.
see, the order's there.
Yeah, the order is there.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so this is where it is different than the calculator. Because with the calculator, you don't necessarily have to put it in a special order. Here, you do, and it tells you what that order
I
is.
see.
Okay?
The one I need to do next.
All right? Okay. I'm almost there. All right, let's do the one for future value. So let's go ahead and get the total number of periods. Okay, get that put in. Okay. And then now equal future value. Now this one's going to be 0 because, once again, we've seen it's been 0 all the way across the page. There is a method to my madness of having you do this because these are the sort of cells you're going to have to create, okay? So you're going to have to get used to it. That's why I'm having you do it yourself. The nice thing is that Excel walks you through this stuff, and there are all sorts of help functions in Excel that if you kind of get lost, you can always click up on the little sort of the help menu and guide you through some of these things. Okay, so this one, we're going to have the rate. What are we going to do to it? Divide by number of periods, comma, then, excuse me, so F6, comma, and then the payment, comma, present value, comma, and the type, close parentheses. All right, and you get $3.55 once again because of rounding. Okay.
Question is, how do we know when to divide? What logic are we looking to see?
Well, in this case, the way that I have this one set up, you're always going to divide only because we've got it set up here that it's always going to be dividing by the number of compounding periods. So if it's 1, it's just going to be dividing by 1, and obviously it's itself.
Okay.
It was 355.
So only.
Sorry? Yeah, it was like,
3.55. Yearly payments contracted monthly. Figure out what term we're in. Figure out
yeah,
what term.
we good? Yes, no, possibly could be? Okay. All right. Now then. Okay. This one's going to be number of period in NPER. We're solving for the number of periods. Here, we're going to enter the rate divided by, obviously, N5, comma, the payment, comma, present value, comma, future value, comma, and the type. Okay. Now, you're gonna get 360, because once again, you gotta adjust it because of it being a monthly. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all of that divided by 12, or divided by B5. Okay? And then our final one, because this one was about the period, we're simply gonna take B5 times B8. Okay? And once again, you're rounding, so a little bit off of the 360. Okay? And then pop it back up there, just in case you didn't quite get it. Okay? Everybody got it? All right, so let's do this. Now that we've got that whole thing sort of populated here, let's go in and just start changing numbers all throughout. Don't change any of the yellow cells, okay? Only change the black and white cells.
Can you highlight the 30 again?
So I did, but it didn't populate didn't populate that. Okay, because I got 360.
The formula that appears when you try to do it through the formula in Excel is not at all like
Oh, and then, yeah, I just need some kind of, so go at the end, we're gonna.
Okay, wait.
when I hit NPR, when I hit
Yep. Okay, let's just start from scratch.
no, I have it worked out.
Okay.
When I do NPR and it shows me the formula that Excel gives you, it's totally different than
What are you gonna do like this?
Really?
yeah.
What do you?
This?
If I go NPR, right, and I click the formula, it says rate, payment, PV, then it gives me this formula, and it's different than yours.
That's weird, shouldn't be. It looks. Here, let me pull mine back up again. Okay, it's not in PER, rate, comma, payment, comma, present value, comma, future value, comma, type.
Yeah, I have this, yeah.
Okay, it's the same.
Oh, I see, the division is,
It's one thing.
Yeah, so the only two modifications are that in the case of the rate, we have to divide it by the number of compounding periods, and we also have to divide the final answer by
by the year.
by the year as well.
How do you know what to divide or what to?
You just gotta instinctively understand it. I mean, you just gotta think about what you're being asked and what you're being given. There's no absolute, it's just kind of, just gonna work through it. Okay. So let's do this. Let's just make sure that everybody's is working. Here, hey, listen to me, because this is where you're gonna make mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes that people make whenever they create these, we gotta make sure that you don't do this. Look at your formulas as you sort of work across the page and make sure that you did not make the mistake of hard coding anything you should not have hard coded. And what I mean by that is, like for example, let me just pull this one up as an example. You could have just simply said B9 divided by 12. That would be wrong. You could have done that. But that would be wrong. I mean, even though the answer for this would have been right, but what if we changed the number of compounding periods? Your formula would no longer work because it would still be set on 12. That's what I mean by hard coding something you don't want to hard code. Okay?
So the more actual B's
You want to keep it flexible, is my point. You know, so that now, what we should be able to do, if everybody did everything correctly, we should be able to go, like, for example, let's set all of these to 1 payment per year. Well, this one, in that case, is probably not going to work.
Probably set to hard.
No, it's not. It's, let me see. Let's set it, actually, that's not, that's what that. Let's run here, make this 15%. Ooh, hello. All right, who's that?
Yeah.
All I'm doing is just kind of going in and just changing up some random numbers here just to see that then you can see if yours is working relative to mine. Okay. There's no meaning, no rhyme or reason to any of these numbers, just to see if everything is matching up. So just, once again, all you're doing is replacing the numbers in black and white with the numbers I've got up here to see if your numbers in yellow correspond. If everything corresponds, you match up, then I think you're pretty much good to go, okay, in terms of your formulas being set up correctly.
B6, can you click on B6?
Okay, do I, well, maybe the format to type in. I'm trying to rush you.
What do you have? 12.
Which one?
12 times 1 is going to be 17.05.
Well, rounding. It's probably not quite 1, it's probably slightly less than 1, or slightly more than 1.
Oh, we didn't plug in that one.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we go all the way over here to column F. That one.
Will you highlight D10?
Okay. Got it? All right. So So hopefully everybody matches up. Okay, so, all right, so let's just start with basically cell B8. Double check that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where we at?
Do you want our numbers to be the exact same as
They should be. If they're not, I'm not sure why they wouldn't be. I mean, there sometimes will be some really quirky little minor things between versions of Excel, but they should be pretty darn close.
So what was the first thing that you changed
What do you mean?
when you started like playing with the numbers?
Well, the only one that, I mean, what we started with was the column for payment. But that, I mean, all of these are independent of each other, so they should all be,
No, but in the end column.
Beginning or the end,
oh, okay.
but in real estate, yes.
Yeah, the only thing that we, obviously, you've got the rate divided by 12, and then at the end, you're dividing everything by 12 as well, because it's monthly.
See, I have that exact formula, and it brings me to 30.
Oh, yeah, but that's why you gotta divide it by B5.
It is.
Oh. But then again, you have the same inputs that I have.
Yeah, why?
And why did you divide by B5 at the very end of that formula one more time?
Well, okay, let's put it back to kind of, because if I didn't, I just kind of remove it, it would come up as 360.
Instead of 30.
Instead of 30. So in order to make it a month or an annual number, then we've got to divide it by the B5, which is the 12. Okay. And so, once again, this is a situation that, yes, pluses and minuses matter, as do, you know, the order of operations. Okay, so all these back to normal.
Oh, wait.
Do you want us to put them all back the way they were?
You can if you want to. I'm just putting them back just so that just for consistency's sake. Okay, so I put all mine back. Oops, that one, 0. There we go. Okay, now I think everything's back to normal. So that should match up. So I think yeah. So I obviously gave you all the solutions on one side so that you can kind of check and make sure that everything is set up correctly. Okay. We all good? Okay. Well, this is a time where you can work with your neighbor and try to figure it out. Okay. So certainly welcome to chat with your neighbor and try to see if you can mutually figure out where you went wrong. if you are wrong.
Close to March.
Which one?
Right? Hard to find a good one.
To make sure they still have the form. Alright, I'll do it to mine. So they have changed in this block. Don't touch that. This should be there. Don't touch that one, just go down to 10. Then 100,000. Here's how I'm so then negative zero. Right. This I said that one. Right. No, it would have been fantastic. This should be good. We did it backwards.
Okay, we got it? Okay, let's move on now. Okay, so here we're going to work on a cash flow calculator. Kind of highlight what we need. All right. So much like this morning, where we have differing cash flows from one year or one period to the next, we need to be able to calculate our internal rate of return, our hurdle rate or our discount rate, and then ultimately our net present value. So, with the calculator, obviously you input each of these, obviously as a singular transaction, and then you know, ultimately then calculate. With Excel, it's a little bit easier. Pretty much come down here, equal IRR, open parentheses, and then you come up here, you grab the values, grab the whole sort of thing from 1 to 15, and then put in a guess if you want to, 0.1 or something. It's that simple. Okay? So a lot less work to basically get the same sort of answer that you do with the calculator. Everybody see that? Okay, so one more time. So what you do, you basically do equal IRR, open the parentheses, and then drag down from basically period 0 all the way down to period 15, which is B21 colon B36, comma, 0.1, close the parentheses for your guess, and then hit enter, and you should get the answer. In this case, 15.24. Yep.
Is the 0.1 is it your,
But once again, just like I was explaining earlier about the guess, it's just something that Excel needs to do its work. It's a seed value. And it's, why they don't just get rid of that, I don't know. It's pretty much pointless. All right?
so, but that's not where you're inputting your discount rate.
No.
Is there like another value we can put in there, or is that just like the recommendation?
I just tend to put in,
One word?
I just put in 0.1 just to, and it, 99 times out of 100 it works.
Okay.
Okay. So in this case, we've got an established discount rate or hurdle rate of 5%. And so we want to calculate what's our net present value for this. Okay. this is going to be a little bit different, but we're going to go ahead and start with equal NPV, open parentheses, and then it starts with the first variable is the rate. Okay, so cell B40. Now, this is where Excel is goofy. Okay, this is going to be the number one mistake you're going to make. Okay, because it doesn't quite initially make sense. So let me try to explain it before you screw it up. Okay, and I mean that in a positive way. Okay, now, for Excel, the way that it does it is it separates out your initial cash flow from all of your cash inflows. So what you actually start with here as your initial value 1 is not going to be time period 0. It's going to be time period 1. Okay? So follow me on this. So it's going to be basically taking cell B22 all the way down to B36. Okay? Everybody follow me? Now, what's going to happen, what's going to happen if we now hit enter? Let's go ahead and do it just for fun. You're going to get like 12,988.43. That's not the answer. Okay? Now, if you look at what the answer is supposed to be, it's supposed to be 29,88.43. Huh, so it's $10,000. Well, we have to subtract out for that original investment, okay? And I know you're probably saying, why? It's just the way Excel deals with this. The first time I did this, many years ago, it was just like, I don't quite understand why that has to separate that the way that it does, but it does. Because it likes to lump all the cash flows together and then separate that from the initial cash outflow, okay? So just accept it, it is the way it is, and put it in, okay? So, in this case, what we're going to do is you're going to add it to cell B21, okay? You're saying, why are you adding? Because you're adding a negative number, so which is the reality of your subtracting it out, okay, is the logic. So just look at what I've got down there. If you can't read it, I'll read it off to you. Okay, so once again, for the net present value, it's equal NPV, open parentheses, cell B40, which is the discount rate, comma, B22, which is period number 1, through B36, which is basically period 15, close parentheses, plus cell B21, which is basically subtracting out the original investment of the $10,000. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? All right. Now then, on the right-hand side, okay, this all right, should be pretty much the same
Can you
thing.
show the B41 formula again?
Okay, once again,
Yep.
I can't see the format, can you just repeat it? What do you want?
is that better?
Yeah. B40.
I think I lost it out for a second.
Okay, got it? Okay, let's move over to the next column
Yeah.
and pretty much rinse and repeat.
Yes.
Oh, you're wrong, Ray.
Did you read the lesson?
So we cannot direct the class.
Well, I guess we could, but I'm choosing not to.
I just missed something.
Yeah, this, he's getting the same thing we got. But not the waiver.
That's awesome.
No, I'm trying to remember. What did I attempt to do here? One sentence is going to drive me nuts. Okay, let's go ahead and then, let me
Is
see.
it because it's the other income that's in addition to this?
Yeah, I think what I did was I chose to do an alternative compounding period. And what I'm trying to remember is what I did, but let me, let's go ahead and calculate the NPV and then we'll come back to it here in a second. All right, so rates. Okay. Okay, go ahead for the moment, we're gonna leave it like this. I'm trying to, I'm gonna have to look at something here in a minute. All right, so once again, for the internal rate of return, for the second column, just simply equal IRR, open parentheses, C21, colon, C36, comma, 0.01, close parentheses. And you should get 11.72. And then for the NPV
So 2718.
is going to be NPV, open parentheses, C40, comma, C22, colon, C36, close parentheses, plus C21. Okay, so
You can just drag the one.
you can,
That's
but
not the point.
part of it is repetition.
What was the last one? Plus C21, thank you.
Okay, now, let's go ahead and go to this one, everyone should be able to do on their own, and if you don't or can't, you probably really should consider dropping. Okay, all right, so all you're gonna be doing for each one of these is calculating the respective income, rate, and values. This is using the simple ERV formula, so see if you can populate that real quick. It should take you all of about a minute and a half.
I did.
Okay, so all this little thing is doing is a very simplistic calculation. It was meant to sort of illustrate what we talked about first thing earlier this morning about ERV, and simply taking our cap rate and basically manipulating it. So if you're given your rate of return or a cap rate, and you're given the value, then you're calculating income. All right. In order to do that, the formula, if you remember, would be rate times value gives us income. Okay. For the cap rate, it's going to be income divided by value is going to give us cap rate. And then finally, to get value, we're going to take income divided by cap rate. Okay? Everybody good?
I was just doing the other ones.
All right. Everybody good with those? Yes? Okay. Now we're going to try a couple other interesting little functions. Cumulative interest. Today. Yes, IT. Okay. So, if you remember from this morning when we were talking about using the amortization function and that sort of thing with the calculator, we're saying we want to calculate the interest from, let's say, the first year to the 12th month, or the first, or the over the entire loan period, or whatever. Well, that's where this little function can come into play. The cumulative interest or cumulative payment. Okay, and so in this case, it should be. Oops, let's pull up the interest. Yeah, interest payment. Okay, so the cumulative interest payment. And so what we're going to start with, and what we're going to use to populate this, are the values in the payment column. Okay? So, in this case, the rate, let's go up there. It's 10%. Okay? And we're going to have to divide that by, obviously, 12 up here, top. Okay, comma. And then the number of periods total. In this case, it's going to be the 360, comma, present value, comma. Then the new piece of this is the starting period, which we've given you here. Start period is going to be month 1, comma, ending period, comma, and then the type. Oops. Okay. And I did not mean to. Okay, let's close that out. But I need to change these. Those actually should be E19.
Why did you change it from E19 to E20? That's not a number.
Oops. Oh, I know what I did. Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry. I thought I screwed up something else, but I didn't. There we go.
So the E should be ups.
Yep. Well, what I did,
Only 19 and 20.
when I looked at the formula, I saw the F's in there, and I'm instinctively thinking everything should be coming from column E and not from F. But then I looked at it again, and obviously that's we're pulling the start period and the end period from there.
Okay, so the last
Okay, so this is the correct formula. So I've got it up there. So I'll read it off to you. Equal cumulative interest payment, open parentheses, E9 divided by E5, comma, E6, comma, E10, comma, F19, comma, F20, comma, E14, close parentheses.
Mine's still,
Now, once again, your numbers are going to have to match up above. So if you didn't change your numbers back above here to match up, so once again, 12 payments per year, 30-year loan, 10% interest, $100,000 loan amount. Now, so let's just take a look at this just for a second. Okay. Now, as we sort of talked a little bit about this morning with the calculator, so if we wanted to know just the first month, period number 1 through period number 1, that's the first month of interest. Does that make sense? Okay. If you wanted the first 12 months of interest, just type in 112. There's the first 12 months of interest. Is everybody following me? Yes or no? What if we wanted year 2? 13, 24. Oops. Okay. So you can basically choose any beginning period, any ending period, and that's going to give you, obviously, the total amount of interest that you paid over that time period for that loan above. Make sense? Yeah. So let's put it back to the 180, just to make sure that I don't screw anything up. Okay. Now, you should be able to do the same thing for the cumulative principal. Okay, it's the same setup. P-R-I-N-C, okay?
Is there a place where you can find all these abbreviations?
Yeah, if you actually use the help function in Excel, it'll pull up, you know, the details. Yeah.
So which one are we doing for?
The cumulative principal.
For which row do you want us to?
Well, same, just like before. You're going to use the one with the payment column. Okay. So once again, you're going to go up, get the rate divided by 12, comma, number of periods, total, comma, present value, comma, period, comma, end period, comma, and
Can you highlight that? So
match it up. Yep. Okay.
You have it.
Okay, everybody got it?
Ooh, mine's not edited.
Okay. So once again, you should get 18, 335, 44. So just to test it out, make sure it's working. Let's change the start period to 13 and the ending period to 24. Okay, matching up.
Mine's not negative. I don't know.
Okay. It's possible that it's not negative, it's something that that up here that possibly is not matching, that something is not negative. Okay, the original number, 1,180. That should be 18,335.44. Okay, and the total paid is just going to be adding those two together. So 157,962.88 is the total paid.
That's the easiest thing we've done.
Yeah, exactly.
You can do that one.
I'm meant to stay in the program.
That's my favorite part.
We almost there? Okay,
Can you go back to the total fiction? Did you do something special, or just you added them?
I just add them together. Okay.
Chris said that was the easiest
I
thing.
wasn't looking, so that's not. I missed it.
Okay. Now, what we want here is what is the loan balance at the end of that particular period. So what we can, in essence, do is simply say, all right, in this case,
It's 100 minus the cumulative principal.
yep. So you're basically going to go up and you're going to take the 100,000, so E, whatever it is, 10, all right. And then subtract out, or actually we're going to add it because of the sign, to F33 or F23. That should give us 81, what, 664? Yep. So once again, hold on here. Okay, so once again, you're going to take the 100,000 loan amount, which is cell E10, and you're going to add it to basically cell F23, because F23 is a negative number. You basically, in order to subtract it, you've got to add it. Okay? Okay? Are we good? Okay, got everything up to that point. Okay, so let's skip down to this next little thing called the effective interest rate calculator.
I know you can't see it.
All right. So, one of the things that we didn't really talk about this morning is the difference between what is referred to as a nominal interest rate and an effective interest rate. The nominal rate of interest is the stated rate of interest. It's the rate of interest that gets thrown out there and the lender just simply says, your rate of interest on this loan is 10%, okay? And that's true as long as the number of compounding periods is 1. But whenever you have multiple compounding periods, in other words, 12 compounding periods or monthly compounding, that rate of interest is actually different than that stated rate. We've got to convert it, if you will, to what is referred to as an effective rate of interest. All right? Now, your calculator, let's just pull those out for just a second. All right, on your calculator, if you have your payments set up as I do now with this calculator on the screen, have 12 payments per year. Go ahead and put your calculator 12 shift payments per year to get it set up, clear it out, make sure that it's set up correctly. Now what you can do is you can type in any interest rate. So in this case, we're going to type in 10%. And you're going to put that as your interest rate. Now here's the thing. You can enter it as just simply 10 and hit the interest rate. And in this one instance, what is below the interest rate key, where it says non% on your calculator? Okay, in this case, it's one and the same. Okay, so you can push shift, you don't have to push shift, it's okay. Now, if you want to solve for the effective interest rate on the calculator, you simply hit the shift key and then hit present value or effective interest rate. Whoops, hello. There we go. You get 10.47 as the effective interest rate.
Okay, so it's 10.47.
10.47 is the effective interest rate. Okay? Yep.
Isn't APR effective?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Yeah, truth in lending.
Yeah, truth is shouldn't be good.
Okay. All right, so you get the 10.47, so we know that is the answer on the calculator. Now we want to do that here with the interest rate on Excel. Now, my recollection is that this we actually have to do an actual formula for, and this is where, get the screen here for a second. Let's see. My pins. All right. Oops. All right. Try to remember. All right. So should have in this case our all right, should have 1 plus the interest rate over 12 raised to the number of periods times the number of compounding periods. Okay, so what we should be putting in is the equivalent of 1 plus 0.10 divided by 12. And in this case, we're simply going to be doing 1 times 12. Let's see if that works out for us. Double check. 0.10 divided by 12. minus 1. Got that one little piece.
Minus 1, you gotta remember that.
Good.
It's huge.
Minus 1.
No, effective.
Okay, so it should, basically, well, without the minus 1, that's going to give you 1.104713, and then you're going to basically take that, minus 1, and then that's going to give you the actual effective rate of the 10.47 or 10.47%. Yep. I'm trying to remember, actually, in Excel, whether it has,
It does, it's equal.
okay. Because I was just going to put it in as a formula.
Equal.
Okay, let's just see. All right, equal. Oh, it does. Okay, I forgot. Okay, so the nominal rate in this case would be the 10%, comma, the number of periods, and there it is right there. Okay, or we could have built it using the formula. All right, either way. But at least you see how you would get it. Okay. All right. Any questions about that so far? Yep. Max?
Sorry, just stretching.
Okay, this is one instance where I am going to give you a 5-minute break.
Can you go?
Yes.
Okay. What, sorry?
Double click on the activity.
Yep, 5-minute break.
Brian. Was there eating your pizza?
Yeah, I told him he should.
So some of my formulas.
Okay.
Supplement? No. Tomorrow. I gotta finish 4 or 5 first. I took the test, but I'll do it Yeah, until December. Yeah, the semester is December 4th. But you gotta manage it with this stuff.
Yes, sir.
It's harder. If you don't study, and the first time that I took this class last year, when I first came in, I hadn't been in school for like 15 years, and my calculator malfunctioned the first day, so I had a little meltdown. Somebody was laughing. And you study. So this one we're test.
Okay, yeah, so you gotta come here on Friday or Monday.
And if you screw up,
This is Monday through Friday. Just gonna be done.
okay. Oh, what he didn't tell you. Okay. It's open book and all that.
Yeah, show up.
It's really simple.
He didn't tell you. Just it's open.
It's open book and it helps if you know it.
Yeah. But he gives you such a short period of time, which he doesn't tell you, that you really can't use it.
I got the book on my computer.
I have the whole book.
Yeah, I was gonna pay.
Just order it on Amazon, because the school never has the book.
Sorry, what, sorry? It'll more than likely be up this afternoon or this evening.
Because I know I have a different color tab.
Yeah, I don't know right yet.
It's got a number on it. Under back, so chills or black on it.
When the pressure's down.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's kind of like, hey, this is what I'm doing. You know? I don't think
Oh, you haven't done this on it? Yeah. Takes a lot of intimidation. Yeah. They're hard to read, you gotta go read that. And he made like, yeah, do that part? I'm like halfway done too. We're all kind of in this. I had him before. No help.
Starting to reanalyze.
It's really kind of hard. Get a clear film on it that makes this color it's actually not there.
Whatever it is.
Everything falls away.
This, you know, it's not hard. Well, biggest thing is understanding the concept. Figuring out, like, writing on a piece of paper, what's being asked. Because none of this makes any difference. Knowing how the math works doesn't even matter if you don't understand the logic of it. You know, being able to multiply, divide, all that stuff, you know, computer calculators can do that. But the first step is to learn this. Fundamentals of it.
Anyone want some kind of cool pizza?
Found it?
Yeah, Morrison was holding on to it.
Oh, man.
Anyone want the full cheese pizza? She's not vegan, but. Nope. You only want it for the meat lover. We're talking now.
It's cup of coffee. It's not the same.
Interest or principal?
It's not bad, it's just.
Well, Aaron, I'm glad you said back to me. No, I only know.
Is that for the class?
You have to.
Yeah. It's like.
I might though. I'm the only one with you.
Probably have. She's gonna
And I bring up because everybody's the same.
Only nine. So where I'm military. In a way, yeah, military and I'm not sure. Oh, no, it's nowhere near. Yeah, military.
Okay. Let's finish this one up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It took me a few minutes to figure out, I'm trying to remember whenever I did this, and why I did what I did, and now I remember. Okay. So this other column, the second column over here, we went ahead and we put in all the information, but I outsmarted myself today in terms of what I wanted to do here. So the way I set this up, if you actually look here in the cell underneath the 2, there is a formula. Okay, whoops, hello. Okay, it's an if-then statement. Something we haven't done, but it's also what we're trying to do here is we're basically telling Excel if we enter a 1 here in basically cell C18, it is going to populate here in cell C19 annual, meaning it's an annual compounded sort of loan or set of income streams. If you enter 12, to sort of show you what I'm talking about, you go up here and you enter 12, then it changes it to monthly. Oh yeah, exactly. That's the epiphany I had as well. I was just like trying to remember whenever I built this thing over a year ago, what I did and why I did what I did. And then if you enter anything other than 1 or 12, like 2, it puts other. Okay? All right. So the point is now, for the calculation piece of this, to make this work and work correctly, go down, all right, and for cell C38, what you've got to do is go ahead and put it in as we did before, which is just simply equal IRR and the range, and then multiply it by C18, which is the number of compounding periods. Okay?
So you took out the guess?
Well, yeah, you can put the guess back in there. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. Excel is finicky.
Why do I have 100?
That's what I have. You gotta take out the guess?
Yeah, I guess you do. I mean, that's the reason I did.
It's close to that. It's not going to take out the guess.
No, I
I did take out the guess.
The negative one's not it. Give it a positive guess.
Okay. So once again, just equal IRR, open parentheses, C21, colon C36, close parentheses, times C18.
Oh, that's one.
Okay? And that should give us the answer of 23.45 if you still have the other up here, or cell C18 is 2. Okay?
And in the
Now,
and in case you do it by 1.
yeah, if you want it for annual, you just hit 1, and then that is going to adjust it to 11.72. Okay, shh. Okay, does everybody understand what it's doing? Let me back out of this a little bit. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. If we put it in up here as 2, which is how it is on the answer sheet and so forth, so you can make sure your numbers are matching, you should get the 23.45. Yep.
I'm identical here, but I got 140.
That's what I have.
Well, you did something wrong. All right, and we're gonna, I'll try to show you here in a second, but let me, okay. What you gotta do, so you gotta make sure that once again, you've got just the internal rate of return, C21 to C36, close parentheses, times C18, which is the 2. Okay?
Got it.
All right, so now, that should give you the 23.45. All right, now if we go up here and we were to change this to 1, then it changes to annual, and it drops down to 11.72. Okay? Now if you want to make it monthly, you type in 12, and you get 140.67. Okay? Because the assumption is those cash flows are happening once a month, therefore the money's coming in a heck of a lot quicker, therefore you're getting a return a lot quicker. Okay? All right? So we go back, put it back to 2, just so that we match up with the numbers on the answer sheet. All right, now then come down to the final piece, which is the net present value. Okay, so here for the net present value, all right, you're going to start out with the rate, which in this case you're going to type in C40 divided by C18. So that way it adjusts the rate by the number of compounding periods. Okay? So all it's doing is it's taking basically that stated rate of 5% divided by the number of compounding periods. In this case, happens to be 2 a year, or payments of twice a year. And then everything else is normal in the sense of then capturing the C22 to C26 or C36, and then adding in the $10,000 that you're actually subtracting out, and then you're done. Okay? That's cool. All right? Now, let me go back to this if-then business. Okay? Because I want to talk about that for a couple of minutes. All right? How many of you, just out of curiosity, have ever used if-then statements before? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So about a third of you. All right. So the cool thing with if-then statements is it allows you to be able to do a whole variety of kind of cool things with Excel, in the sense that depending on the value that you put in for something, you can then have an output that could be a textual output, like in this case, monthly, annual, other. Okay? It also could work like, you know, from an instructor's perspective. I can create an if-then statement that says, if your grade ranges from, let's say, 97 to 100%, that's an A+. If it's between a 93 and a 96, it's an A. If it's between a 90 and a 92, it's an A-, and so forth, so on, and it will push that out so that instantly you don't have to do the actual conversion yourself. So if-then statements are a great way of taking numerical information and converting it either to textual information, or it can also be converted into another number as well. So another way you might use this, like for example, you're doing an underwriting of a loan, and you sort of say, if it meets this criteria, and this criteria, approve the loan. Okay? If it doesn't meet this criteria, or this criteria, deny the loan. Okay? So it's a cool way of being able to use information that maybe you have captured, you know, within an Excel model to be able to produce an output. Now, the question for the 20 of you that have never used an if-then statement is, how does it work? Okay, so let's kind of go through the mechanics of this. So the way all if-then statements start out is equal if, okay? Then you open the parentheses, and then from there, you come up with some sort of qualifier as to what you want it to sort of some condition that you want it to meet. So in this case, the first condition we want it to meet is if cell C18 is equal to 1, then what we want it to do is to populate annual within that cell. Okay? Then you continue on. If C18 equals 12, then you want it to populate monthly within that cell. Okay? If it doesn't meet either of those conditions, then it simply says other. Okay? Now here's the interesting thing about if-then statements. These things can go on a mile long. I mean, in terms of preconditions. In this case, we've only got 3 outcomes. It's either going to be annual, monthly, or other. But we could continue it out and sort of say, all right, if it's 2, then that's going to be basically, twice a year, or semi-annual. If it's 4 times a year, it's quarterly. If it's 365, it's daily. And we can, keep on with that if-then statement and keep, sort of adding to it. Does that make sense? Okay, question?
Can you chain it?
Can you what?
Can you chain them?
In what way?
Like, let's say it produces,
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, in the sense that you're saying that can you use one to then populate another one and to another one? And yes, you can. Okay. All right. Questions? Mind blown? All right. All right. Any questions on this up to this point?
He's still smiling.
He's just happy. Okay. Other questions? Are we good with this so far? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. 2 things. We're going to go ahead and do a little quiz. And then after the quiz, then we're going to sort of start some additional sort of new spreadsheets. But this way, that you can go and get the little quiz out of the way and kind of get a sense of what the quiz is all about. And the quiz is obviously open computer, so you should be able to handle it reasonably well. Now, and this also is a good test case to sort of see if you're following directions and you're keeping along with it. Because the way that I structure these quizzes is that if you built the spreadsheet with me the whole way through, you should get 100%. If you screwed up the spreadsheet somewhere along and didn't do a good job, or you don't put the information in correctly, then you're not going to get 100%, okay? So it's pretty straightforward. All right, so let me pass these out. And you just write your answers on the sheet itself.
I ain't gonna do it.
I'm gonna grab it on my way out.
Now you don't get to work on the quizzes together. Let me make sure that's clear.
Because when I take this out, it gives me nothing. Gives me, I don't know why. I screwed that one up.
How much time do we have? Oh, 5 minutes ought to be enough.
What?
Oh, there you go. Oh, you got your one?
Excel spreadsheet
Yep.
on this?
Absolutely. And whenever you finish, just bring it up here and turn it in, and then go take a break. When the last person finishes, break is over.
tricky.
more people are working on it? Sorry, 1, 2, 4, okay. We're gonna have a hard stop at 3:30, so 15 more minutes. Okay, who's still working? Okay, 2 of you, 3 of you, 4 of you.
Not grading them immediately?
Oh, I thought about it.
What, please grade them immediately or? I kinda like knowing right after. So, we're doing another Excel review?
We got a little bit more to do.
A different one?
No.
Did you send that to everybody and everybody?
No, no, this is gonna be from scratch.
So we're creating it ourselves, kind of,
Well, sure.
with you, I guess.
Okay, if you're still working, I need you to turn them in. Is that everybody? Thank you. That it? Final last call? Okay. Alrighty, let's go.
Yeah, they put it on a lot of outside investors. Yeah, they put that in like a year ago and they put it in.
Good, Bob?
A bunch of other like.
Just slow down, bro, slow. I'm stable,
Okay, how are we doing? All right, so a couple of little things we want to get done over the next hour, and then we'll be out of here. All right, so I will have these graded obviously before you get in here next time, and we'll kind of go through and talk about them at the beginning of class next time, kind of walk through everything. There were definitely a couple of little tricks I threw in there just to kind of, see if you were paying attention and kind of separate out the people who really know it from the kind of people who kind of sort of know it. So that will kind of work its way out. Okay. Now, what I want to talk about right now is at the end of this class, in an 8th class session, you're going to have a presentation / project. It's your final spreadsheet. And that you're going to do it in groups of 2, okay? That's as big as I want the groups. There are 30 people in here, so 15 groups of 2, all right? Now, if somebody drops out, well, we're going to deal with that, but for the most part, I want you to pair up with somebody. Now, what the project is going to be is your creation from scratch of a commercial loan underwriting model, okay? Now, you're saying, what? What is that? All right, well, we're obviously going to be covering stuff that relates to that as we kind of work our way down. The point being is this is kind of what I was talking a little bit about earlier, that you're going to come up with a model that you're going to input a variety of criteria about a property or about a loan that has been requested, and then your model is going to render a decision as to whether or not this loan, number 1, should be made, but also setting the appropriate interest rate and the terms and that sort of thing for the loan. Does that make sense conceptually? Okay. Now, as we work through the different models that we work through over the course of the semester, all will become clearer. Okay. And so by the time we get into that 6th or 7th week, I don't expect you to be working on this until the 6th or 7th week. Okay. Let's just put it bluntly, because you're going to wait until the last minute and do it, that last week anyway, so there's no need in trying to build it up into something, it's not. All right, so, but I want to plant the seed now for you to be thinking about it, so as we're going through some of the things that we're going through, that you're going to take snippets away and sort of say, aha, that's something I probably ought to include in my underwriting model. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, on a very basic level, let's just kind of, think about this. This will help to maybe, answer a few questions as it relates to what I mean by, for those of you that are brand new to all of this, sort of a loan underwriting. At a very, very basic level, you have a couple of different things that lenders look at on a relatively consistent basis. They look at something called a debt service coverage ratio. Okay. And they also look at the loan-to-value ratio. All right. Now, the formulas for each of these are very simple formulas. So for the debt service coverage ratio, also sometimes it's called the debt coverage ratio, depending on who's talking about it, it's the same thing, is equal to your net operating income, whoops, right, your net operating income divided by your annual debt service. We're going to show you what that is and work through that here in a second. And then your loan-to-value ratio is simply looking at what is basically the loan amount that a lender is willing to give you relative to what is the value of the property. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, let's kind of work through a couple of quick little examples to help illustrate this, what we mean. All right? If you remember, kind of from this morning, we have our little income statement. We have potential gross income minus vacancy and collection losses plus other income gives us effective gross income, subtract out our total operating expenses, which gives us net operating income, and we said we'd subtract out annual debt service, and that would give us before tax cash flow. Okay? Everybody remembers that from this morning. Now, so when we're going through and we've got all of these numbers that we're populating for our property, I'm going to kind of ignore everything down to net operating income. So let's just assume that we have $100,000 a year in net operating income on our property, okay? Once we know what the net operating income on the property is, what we're saying is the lender, with this debt service coverage ratio, they're taking that number of $100,000 and they're saying, we want to make sure that as a lender, we're able to collect our money, okay? And so whatever loan you get, what they're concerned with is, what is the total dollar amount of the payments that you're going to be making on that loan to them over the course of the year. So the point is this: if this is the money you have available to pay the loan, they are not going to let you have a loan where the payment is going to be equal to or greater than this number. Does that make sense? They want you to have a loan payment that is going to be something less than $100,000 a year. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, they won't get paid. Okay? But what they do is they build in a cushion depending on the risk of the property, depending on the risk of the borrower, and say that risk, we may want anywhere from a 10% cushion to a 30 or 40% cushion, okay? Depending on, once again, the risk profile. Well, if it's only a 10% cushion, that's a relatively low risk investor that they would be potentially loaning to. Whereas if they required a debt service coverage ratio where you had a 30 or 40% cushion, that's a much higher risk. Does that make sense conceptually? All right, so let me just sort of show you what I mean by that. So if the debt service coverage ratio was a 1.10. That means they have a 10% cushion, okay? And what I mean by that is if you take the $100,000, all right, and you work the math, you divide the $100,000 by 1.1, you get a maximum allowable debt service of 909.0909. Okay? Does everybody see that? Okay? That represents a 10% cushion. So what that means is the lender is basically saying, I don't inherently trust that you're